The morning of the custody hearing dawned crisp and clear, the autumn sunlight slanting through Emma Mitchell's bedroom window as she carefully braided her dark hair. At 12 years old, she had mastered the art of self-sufficiency, necessity, teaching her what other children her age had yet to learn. She secured the braid with an elastic band, then reached for the compass pendant that never left her neck, running her fingers over its cool metal surface with practiced precision. Downstairs, she could hear her father moving around the kitchen, the familiar sounds of breakfast preparation providing a comforting backdrop to the tension of the day ahead. Professor Thomas Mitchell had been up since dawn reviewing notes with his attorney via early phone calls, his voice a low murmur that carried up the stairs despite his efforts to keep quiet. This wasn't their first custody hearing, but something about today felt different. Final somehow. Emma studied her reflection in the mirror. The navy blue dress her father had bought specifically for court appearances, the sensible shoes, the serious expression that made her look older than her years. She had worn variations of this outfit to previous hearings, standing beside her father as they listened to legal arguments about her mother's continued absence. Her mother, Commander Alexandra Mitchell, the woman whose photographs adorned the walls of their home, but who remained more myth than reality in Emma's daily life. 8 years of sporadic visits, missed birthdays, and explanations that explained nothing. "Emma," her father's voice called up the stairs. "Breakfast is ready, honey." "Coming, Dad." In the kitchen, Thomas had prepared her favorite, blueberry pancakes, a small attempt at normality on a day that was anything but normal. He wore his court suit, navy blue like her dress, his tie knotted perfectly. The dark circles under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. "Big day," he said, placing a plate in front of her. "Eat up." Emma nodded, taking a bite more out of duty than hunger. "Dad, what happens if the judge agrees with your petition?" Thomas sighed, sitting across from her with his coffee. "Then you'll have stability, Emma. No more waiting for visits that may or may not happen. No more disappointments." "But she'll still be my mom." "Of course." Thomas reached across the table, covering her small hand with his. "Nothing changes that. This is about legal arrangements, not erasing your mother." Emma nodded, though the distinction seemed academic to her 12-year-old mind. She had tried over the years to explain her mother's absences to friends, to teachers, even to herself. The explanations had evolved as she grew older and gathered more information, piecing together clues like the detective in the books she loved to read. "Remember," Thomas said gently, "whatever happens in court today, I just want what's best for you." "I know, Dad." Emma managed a smile, though her stomach churned with anxiety. "Me too." The drive to the courthouse was quiet, father and daughter lost in their own thoughts. Thomas occasionally glanced at Emma in the rearview mirror, worried about the toll this process was taking on her. She sat so still, so composed, the compass pendant clutched in her small hand like a talisman. "Your family," Thomas replied. "That doesn't need to be earned. It just is." The Naval Special Warfare Training Center had been modified to accommodate the newly public female operator program. Alex strode through the main building toward the conference room, where her new team awaited Lieutenant Ramirez falling into step beside her in the corridor. "All present and accounted for," Commander Ramirez reported. 6 trainers from Athena Unit 4 Senior, enlisted from traditional SEAL teams, and 2 psychological specialists to address integration issues. "The SEAL trainers?" Alex asked. "They're on board with the program. They've been briefed on our operational record," Ramirez replied with a small smile. "Success speaks for itself, and having Chief Martinez's husband as one of the trainers helps. He's respected in the traditional teams." They paused outside the conference room door, Alex taking a moment to center herself before this new beginning. "How's the family, Commander?" Ramirez asked, her tone softening slightly. "The adjustment going well." "It's a process," Alex admitted, "but a hopeful one. Emma is resilient. Thomas is more forgiving than I deserve." Ramirez nodded. "Family is complicated. My boys still don't know what I really do. My husband thinks I'm flying a desk these days." "Will you tell them now that the program is being declassified?" "Eventually," Ramirez said, "when they're old enough to understand. Right now, they just need their mother." Alex absorbed this wisdom, then straightened her shoulders and opened the door to the conference room. 12 faces turned toward her, expressions ranging from respect to curiosity to lingering skepticism. "Good morning," she began, her words carrying the natural authority that had led her through 8 years of groundbreaking service. I'm Commander Alexandra Mitchell, and as of today, we are making history. She activated the screen behind her displaying the official program designation, Special Warfare Advanced Female Tactical Operations, Project Athena. For 7 years, our experimental unit has operated in complete secrecy, proving that female operators can meet and exceed the standards of naval special warfare. Beginning today, we transition from experimental to established. Our mission is to build a program that will integrate female operators into the SEAL teams, not as exceptions, but as assets. She surveyed the room, making eye contact with each person present. Make no mistake, this will be challenging. We will face resistance, skepticism, and institutional inertia. But we have already proven what's possible. Now we need to make it sustainable. The briefing continued for 2 hours, Alex outlining the training protocols, operational parameters, and integration strategies that would form the backbone of the new program. Throughout, she drew on lessons learned during Athena Unit's groundbreaking service, translating hard-won experience into a blueprint for the future. As the meeting concluded and the team dispersed to their assignments, Alex found herself standing alone at the window, looking out at the training grounds, where recruits would soon be pushing their limits. Lieutenant Ramirez approached, handing her a folder. The first candidate pool commander. 28 women pre-screened from all service branches. Initial training begins in 3 weeks. Alex accepted the folder, her thoughts momentarily shifting to Emma. Lieutenant, I'd like to adjust the weekend training schedule. I need to be home Friday nights and Saturdays. Ramirez raised an eyebrow but nodded. I'll rework the rotation, ma'am. May I ask why, Emma has swim meets on Saturdays, Alex replied simply. I promised I wouldn't miss them. Understanding dawned on Ramirez's face. The next generation deserves to see us balancing duty and family, Commander. It might be the most important thing we teach them. The weeks passed, autumn deepening into winter as the Mitchell family established new patterns. Alex's work at the training center consumed her days, but she was home each evening, present in ways she had never been before. Emma's initial caution gradually gave way to a more natural relationship, while Thomas and Alex navigated the complex terrain of a marriage interrupted and now cautiously resuming. On a cold December morning, the family gathered in the bleachers of the Regional Aquatic Center, bundled against the chill, but warmed by anticipation. Emma's first major swim competition since Alex's return had drawn not only her parents but an unexpected contingent of supporters. Is that? Thomas began, noticing the 4 women seated several rows behind them. Alex glanced back, then smiled slightly. My team took a training day. They wanted to support Emma. Lieutenant Ramirez nodded respectfully from her seat, the other members of Athena Unit flanking her in civilian clothes that did nothing to disguise their military bearing. They didn't have to come, Thomas said, surprised by the gesture. That's not how they see it, Alex replied. In their minds, Emma is family because I am. It's how special operations units think the team extends to include everyone who matters to a team member. Before Thomas could respond, the announcer called for the 1,500-meter freestyle, Emma's strongest event. They watched as she stepped onto the starting block, her tall, slender frame poised for explosion into the water. When the buzzer sounded, she launched forward in a clean arc, surfacing several meters out with powerful strokes that immediately established her lead. She's amazing, Alex said, unable to hide her pride, and Emma maintained her pace through the grueling distance event. Look at her extension, her rotation, it's perfect technique. She gets that from you, Thomas said. Or your mother, I suppose. The coach says it's in her blood. Alex watched her daughter glide through the water with seemingly effortless power, steadily increasing her lead. Maybe some things are, but everything else, her discipline, her focus, her resilience, that comes from you, from how you raised her. From both of us, Thomas corrected. Your absence shaped her too, Alex. It forced her to be stronger, more independent, more observant. For better or worse, we both made her who she is. When Emma touched the wall nearly half a pool length ahead of her nearest competitor, Alex and Thomas rose together, applauding with unrestrained pride. Behind them, the women of Athena Unit stood as well, their voices joining the general acclaim. Later that evening, as they celebrated Emma's victory with dinner at her favorite restaurant, Alex's phone vibrated with a message. She checked it discreetly, then excused herself briefly from the table. When she returned, her expression had shifted subtly, a change that Thomas recognized immediately from years ago. What is it? He asked quietly while Emma was distracted by dessert options. The official announcement, Alex replied. The existence of female SEAL operators will be publicly acknowledged tomorrow morning. The Secretary of the Navy is holding a press conference. They want me there. In Washington, Thomas asked, mentally calculating the logistics. Yes, I'll need to leave tonight. She glanced at Emma, then back to Thomas. It's just for one night. I'll be back tomorrow evening. You should go, Emma said, having overheard despite their lowered voices. It's important, Mom. It's what you've worked for all these years. Alex studied her daughter's face, searching for any sign of the old hurt, the fear of abandonment that had shadowed their relationship for so long. You're sure, she asked. I can request a video conference instead. Emma shook her head firmly. No way. You need to be there in person. This is history, right? The first female SEALs being officially recognized. You have to represent. I'd be back tomorrow night, Alex promised, before your biology presentation on Friday. I know you will, Emma said, her simple faith in her mother's return the greatest gift she could have offered. That trust, so hard-won and so easily extended now, brought an unexpected tightness to Alex's throat. She reached across the table, squeezing Emma's hand. When did you get so wise? She asked. Emma smiled, the expression transforming her serious face into something lighter, younger. Must be in my blood. The next morning, Thomas and Emma watched the press conference on television, pride evident in their expressions as Alex stood at attention behind the Secretary of the Navy. Her uniform was impeccable, her posture perfect, her face composed as the official announcement confirmed what Emma had known for years, that women had been serving as Navy SEALs, completing missions of critical importance to national security. When a reporter asked about the significance of the program, the Secretary gestured for Alex to step forward. Commander Mitchell was among the first candidates selected for the experimental program 7 years ago, he explained. She can speak to its importance better than anyone. Alex approached the microphone with the same quiet confidence she brought to everything. The integration of women into naval special warfare isn't about politics or social engineering, she stated clearly. It's about operational effectiveness. There are missions where female operators provide tactical advantages that cannot be replicated. Our unit's success rate speaks for itself. Commander Mitchell, one reporter called out, what would you say to young women considering this path? Alex paused her thoughts, turning briefly to Emma, watching at home. I would tell them the same thing we tell all potential SEAL candidates. This isn't about proving something to others or to yourself. It's about service, about being part of something larger than yourself. The standards won't change, the challenges won't diminish. But the opportunity to serve in this capacity is now open to those who can meet those standards regardless of gender. As the press conference concluded and the cameras turned away, Alex found herself approached by a senior admiral she recognized from the Pentagon's Special Operations Directorate. Impressive statement, Commander, he said, shaking her hand. Concise on message, perfect for public consumption. Thank you, sir. The admiral lowered his voice slightly. Of course, we both know there's more to it than that. Your unit's operations in Southeast Asia alone changed the game for counter-trafficking initiatives. The Bangkok extraction was textbook special operations at its finest. Alex maintained her neutral expression. I can neither confirm nor deny specific operations, Admiral. He smiled slightly. Of course not. But off the record, the work your team did saved hundreds of lives, Commander. That legacy will continue long after today's headlines fade. The team deserves the credit, sir, Alex replied. I just had the privilege of leading them. And now you'll lead the next generation, the Admiral noted. The training command speaks highly of your program development. Washington has its eye on you, Mitchell. Your career trajectory is looking very impressive. Alex thought of Emma and Thomas waiting at home, of the years already sacrificed to duty and ambition. Thank you, sir, but my focus right now is building a sustainable program and maintaining balance with my family. I've missed enough of my daughter's life. The Admiral studied her with new interest. Family and service have always been difficult to balance in special operations. With respect, sir, that's exactly what needs to change if we want this program to succeed long-term. We can't ask female operators to choose between family and service any more than we should ask it of male operators. The next generation deserves better solutions than the ones we had. That evening, as promised, Alex returned home in time for dinner. Emma was full of questions about the press conference, about the future of the program, about what it all meant. Thomas listened quietly, observing the easy rapport that had developed between mother and daughter over the past months. Will you be famous now? Emma asked, half joking. Hardly, Alex laughed. Most of what we did will remain classified for decades. The public will know female SEALs exist, but the details of our operations will stay secret. But people will know it's possible, Emma insisted. Girls my age will know they could do it too if they wanted. That's the most important part, Alex agreed, opening the door for those who come after us. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Alex found Thomas in his study grading papers with his usual methodical care. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him work, struck by the familiar sight she had missed for so many years. The Admiral offered me a promotion, she said without preamble. Pentagon Liaison for Special Operations Integration. It would mean moving to Washington. Thomas set down his pen, turning to face her fully. And what did you say? I turned it down, Alex replied simply. My place is here building the training program, being home with you and Emma. Thomas studied her face, searching for any sign of regret or resentment. Are you sure it sounds like a significant opportunity? I'm sure, Alex said firmly. I've missed enough already. I won't miss any more. Thomas nodded slowly, accepting her decision. What happens next then, with the program, with your career? I build something sustainable, Alex said, entering the study and sitting across from him. Something that allows the women who follow to serve without sacrificing everything else that matters. And I rebuild what matters here with you and Emma, if you'll let me. If I'll let you, Thomas repeated in surprise, evident in his voice. Alex, I've kept your study exactly as you left it for 8 years. I never stopped hoping you'd come home for good. And now I have, she said softly. But I'm not the same woman who left Thomas. That woman believed her service required total sacrifice. I've learned differently now. We've all changed, Thomas acknowledged. The question is whether who we've become still fits together. Alex looked around the study at the books they had once discussed late into the night, at the photographs from earlier happier times, at the evidence of a life interrupted but never fully abandoned. I think we're finding out that we do, she said. Day by day, we're finding our way back to each other. Thomas smiled, the expression warming his academic features. Not back, forward, to something new that honors what came before but doesn't try to recreate it. Forward then, Alex agreed, returning his smile with one of her own. Spring came to Philadelphia, bringing with it renewal, both literal and symbolic, for the Mitchell family. The custody agreement that had once seemed so necessary had become merely a formality, a legal framework around a family that had found its own balance. On a warm Saturday in May, they gathered in the backyard, hosting a barbecue that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Thomas manned the grill with professional intensity, while Emma set the patio table with careful precision. Alex emerged from the house carrying a salad bowl, pausing to observe the domestic scene with quiet appreciation. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of their guests. Lieutenant Ramirez entered the backyard with her husband and twin boys, followed by Chief Martinez and her husband. Commander Wilson arrived alone, as was her preference. The final guests were the elderly man from the diner and his granddaughter, a quiet teenager whose eyes held shadows of experiences no child should endure. The gathering represented a careful merging of worlds that Alex had once kept rigidly separate. Her team, her family, and the unexpected connection to those they had helped, all sharing the same space, breaking bread together in the spring sunshine. As the adults settled into conversation and the children played on the lawn, Emma approached her mother, a questioning look on her face. Is this okay? She asked quietly. Having everyone here together. More than okay, Alex replied. It's right. These are all the people who matter most in different ways. They should know each other. Emma nodded, her gaze drifting to the teenage girl sitting slightly apart from the others. She was one of them, wasn't she, from Bangkok? Alex neither confirmed nor denied, but her expression was answer enough. That's why you couldn't come home when I was sick, Emma said, understanding dawning fully. You were saving her. We were completing our mission, Alex corrected gently. That's all I can say. Emma watched as the girl's grandfather approached Thomas, the two men falling into easy conversation about history and teaching. Different worlds connecting, finding common ground. I'm glad you're home now, Emma said simply, but I'm also glad you were there then, even though I didn't understand it at the time. Alex put her arm around her daughter's shoulders, pulling her close in a rare display of physical affection. Some choices have no perfect answers, she said softly. We just do the best we can with the mission in front of us. Emma leaned into her mother's embrace, secure in the knowledge that she was at last her mother's primary mission. As evening approached and their guests departed, the Mitchell family began the comfortable routine of cleanup, moving together with the ease of people who had found their rhythm. Thomas packed leftover food into containers, while Emma cleared the table and Alex washed the grill tools. "Good day," Thomas commented, his understated way of expressing satisfaction. "Very good," Alex agreed, glancing toward Emma, who was carefully wrapping leftover cake. "It felt right having everyone here." "Your worlds colliding," Thomas observed. "Not colliding," Alex corrected. "Merging. There's a difference." Later, as twilight settled over the garden, they sat together on the porch swing, Emma between her parents, her head resting against her mother's shoulder, as they gently swayed in the gathering darkness. No words were necessary in this moment of perfect equilibrium, this hard-won peace, after years of separation and secrets. The compass pendant still hung around Emma's neck, its hidden compartment, a reminder of darker times. The challenge coin rested on her desk upstairs, a symbol of recognition and belonging. But neither was needed now, for connection, for faith, for trust. Those had been rebuilt, day by day, moment by moment, promise by kept promise. Behind them, the house stood warm and welcoming, lights glowing in windows that had often been dark during Alex's absences. Before them stretched a future uncertain in its details, but secure in its foundation, a family rebuilt on truth, rather than secrets on presence, rather than absence on understanding, rather than assumption. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Emma's voice broke the comfortable silence. "Do you think I could be like you someday, Mom? Do what you did." Alex exchanged a glance with Thomas over their daughter's head, reading his concern mirroring her own. "You could be," Alex said carefully. "You have the intelligence, the discipline, the courage. But the better question is whether you should." "The cost is high," Thomas added quietly. "We've all paid it in different ways." Emma considered this, turning the question over in her mind with the careful deliberation that characterized her approach to life. "I think," she said finally, "that I want to find my own way to serve, something that uses what I'm good at but doesn't require the sacrifices you made." Alex felt a weight lift from her shoulders, relief washing through her at her daughter's wisdom. "That sounds like the right mission for you," she said, pressing a kiss to Emma's hair. "And whatever path you choose, we'll both be here to support you." "Promise?" Emma asked the question, carrying echoes of earlier doubts, earlier fears. "Promise," Alex and Thomas replied in unison. Their voices blending in the gathering darkness, a harmony of commitment that wrapped around their daughter like a protective shield against whatever challenges lay ahead. In that moment on a porch swing in suburban Philadelphia, the Mitchell family found themselves exactly where they were meant to be together, facing forward. Their separate journeys finally converged into a shared path. Not perfect, not without its scars and memories of harder times, but whole in a way that acknowledged both what had been lost and what had been found. The truth that Emma had defended in that courtroom months ago had finally prevailed, not just the truth about her mother's service, but the deeper truth about family, about faith kept against all odds, about the courage to stand firm when no one else believes. Some things, after all, are more important than being believed. Some truths must simply be lived day by day, choice by choice, promise by kept promise, until they become so evident that no one can deny them. And in the Mitchell family's case, that truth was simple. They belonged together, and no duty, no mission, no court, no secret would ever separate them again. "Okay back there?" he asked as they navigated downtown Philadelphia traffic. "I'm fine," Emma replied, the answer she always gave regardless of the truth. She stared out the window, watching the city pass by. "Dad, do you think Mom will show up this time?" The question hung in the air between them. Thomas's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know, Emma. I hope so for your sake." Emma nodded, returning her gaze to the window. She hadn't told her father what she knew, what she had discovered over years of careful observation and research. There were some truths too unlikely to be believed, even by those who loved you most. The mahogany-paneled courtroom of Philadelphia County carried the weight of 100 years of judgments. Light filtered through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced above the proceedings like silent witnesses. The room held its breath as the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise for the Honorable Judge William Harrington." The man who entered moved with unmistakable military bearing. Back straight, movements economical gaze assessing. 30 years in the Navy before joining the bench had permanently shaped how Judge Harrington carried himself. The courtroom recognized power when it saw it and fell silent. Emma Mitchell sat beside her father's attorney with the composed stillness of someone who had grown accustomed to difficult situations. Unlike most 12-year-olds in courtrooms, she didn't fidget. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and around her neck hung an unusual compass pendant that her fingers occasionally traced in specific patterns when she thought no one was watching. Her father, Professor Thomas Mitchell, adjusted his tie nervously. The University of Pennsylvania history professor specialized in naval operations during the Cold War, a career choice influenced by his own service in naval intelligence before academia claimed him. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights, his gaze constantly drifting to his daughter. "We're here to continue the custody hearing for Emma Mitchell," Judge Harrington announced, scanning documents with practiced efficiency. "I understand the respondent is once again absent." The opposing counsel, Meredith Barnes, rose with practiced precision. Her tailored suit and perfect posture projected confidence bordering on smugness. "Yes, Your Honor. Commander Mitchell has failed to appear for the third consecutive hearing, further demonstrating the pattern of absence we have documented over the past 8 years." Thomas's attorney presented evidence of Alexandra Mitchell's unexplained absences. The picture painted was devastating in its simplicity, a mother who had chosen something else over her child. Time and again. "Your Honor," and Thomas's attorney said, "Professor Mitchell has been the consistent parent in Emma's life. He has never missed a school event, doctor's appointment, or recital." The attorney turned to a specific exhibit, a photograph that made Emma's eyes drop to her lap. When Emma turned 7, this was her birthday party. You'll note Professor Mitchell standing beside her, but Commander Mitchell's absence is conspicuous. When Emma won the state science competition last year, her mother was nowhere to be found. Most critically, when Emma was hospitalized with severe pneumonia at age 7, she spent 6 days in the hospital without her mother appearing once. Thomas Mitchell winced at the memory. Those days in the pediatric ward watching his daughter struggle to breathe while calling Alexandra's contact numbers repeatedly only to reach voicemail after voicemail. "We believe full custody should be awarded to Professor Mitchell with supervised visitation for Commander Mitchell when she decides to make herself available." Judge Harrington nodded, making notes, his expression giving nothing away. The military man in him appreciated order and responsibility. "Ms. Barnes, your argument." The opposing counsel approached the bench with confident steps. "Your Honor, we have attempted to secure Commander Mitchell's presence for these proceedings multiple times. Her pattern of absence speaks for itself. She claims her work prevents her attendance, yet provides no documentation. No supervisor contacts, not even a consistent explanation of what this work entails." Barnes paused for effect, casting a sympathetic glance toward Emma that didn't reach her eyes. "We believe this demonstrates a fundamental lack of prioritization of her child's well-being." Judge Harrington turned his attention to Emma. Something in his demeanor softened marginally, the way hardened men often do when addressing children. "I'd like to hear from the minor child. Emma Mitchell, please approach the witness stand." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Calling a child to testify in custody cases wasn't unheard of, but it wasn't common either, especially one so young. Emma walked to the stand with unusual composure, her small shoulders squared, chin slightly raised. After being sworn in, she sat with her hands folded in her lap, only occasionally touching the compass pendant. "Emma," Judge Harrington leaned forward slightly, his tone carefully modulated. "Can you tell the court about your relationship with your mother?" Emma's fingers found the compass pendant, tracing its edge in what seemed like a nervous gesture, but followed a precise pattern. "She loves me," Emma said, her voice small but steady. "She can't always be here, but it's not because she doesn't want to be." "And why can't she be here? Does she explain her absences to you?" Emma hesitated, looking at her father, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "She can't tell us where she goes." Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. "It's classified." A ripple of murmurs moved through the courtroom. Judge Harrington's eyebrow raised fractionally. "Classified," he repeated. "What exactly does your mother do for work, Emma?" Emma's fingers traced a pattern on the pendant that resembled a military signal code. She looked at her father again, who gave another slight nod. "She serves in a special Navy program," Emma said, her voice clear despite its softness. "She's one of the first female Navy SEALs." The courtroom erupted in poorly suppressed laughter. Judge Harrington's mouth twitched, not quite hiding his disbelief. Opposing counsel didn't bother hiding her smirk. "Young lady," Judge Harrington said, removing his glasses with theatrical patience. "I appreciate imagination, but this is a court of law. I served 30 years in the United States Navy. There are no female Navy SEALs. That program doesn't exist." The laughter grew louder. Emma's cheeks flushed, but her eyes remained steady. "She is," Emma insisted quietly. "I'm not lying. This court doesn't appreciate fabrications even from children." Judge Harrington continued, his voice carrying over the diminishing laughter. "Especially when those fabrications dishonor the real servicemen who sacrifice daily for our freedoms." Thomas stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Your Honor, please. My daughter is not a liar." "Professor Mitchell, control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt," Judge Harrington warned. "Now, young lady, I'll give you another chance to explain your mother's absences truthfully." Emma's composure finally cracked, her voice wavering. "I am telling the truth. My mother serves our country. She can't tell us where she goes or what she does, but she loves me, and she's a hero, and no one believes me." Judge Harrington sighed, making another note. "Ms. Barnes, your cross-examination." The opposing counsel approached with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emma, has your mother told you to say these things about being a Navy SEAL?" "No," Emma's answer was immediate. "She never told me directly. I figured it out myself." "You figured it out?" Mrs. Barnes repeated skeptically. "How exactly?" Emma sat up straighter, her demeanor shifting from defensive to determined. "I found her training journal once when I was 8. And I've heard her talking on secure calls, and she has scars and calluses that match special operations training. And she knows things about naval operations that regular people don't know." Thomas watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. This was the first he'd heard of a training journal. Had Alex been that careless, or had their daughter been that resourceful? "So you've been spying on your mother?" Miss Barnes suggested. "Objection," Thomas's attorney called, badgering the witness. "Sustained," Judge Harrington said. Ms. Barnes rephrase. Ms. Barnes adjusted her approach. "Emma, has your father suggested to you that your mother might be involved in classified military operations?" "No." Emma shook her head. "Dad doesn't know either. He just knows she works for the government and can't talk about it. So neither of your parents has actually told you that your mother is a Navy SEAL, yet you're asking this court to believe it's true." "I know it's true," Emma said, her voice gaining strength again. "Just because adults don't tell you something doesn't mean you can't figure it out." The words hung in the air, carrying wisdom beyond her years. Several jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, caught between amusement at the implausible claim and respect for the child's conviction. A court officer approached the bench, hurriedly interrupting the questioning. He whispered something in Judge Harrington's ear. The judge's expression shifted subtly. Confusion, then disbelief, then something unreadable. "This court will take a 10-minute recess," he announced abruptly. "Counsel, approach the bench before you leave." As the lawyers gathered, Emma returned to her seat beside her father. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders and whispered in her ear, "You're doing great, sweetie. I'm proud of you for telling your truth." She shook her head, still clutching the compass pendant. "It's not my truth, Dad. It's just the truth." "What's happening?" Thomas asked his attorney when she returned. "I'm not entirely sure," the attorney replied, looking confused. "The judge received some kind of notification. He's asked that we all remain in the courtroom during the recess, but he wouldn't explain why." The minutes ticked by slowly. The gallery whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing at Emma and Thomas. Opposing counsel shuffled papers, nervously checking her watch repeatedly. Judge Harrington returned exactly 10 minutes later, his demeanor noticeably changed. He sat down slowly, arranging papers before him with deliberate movements. "Before we continue," he began, his voice carefully neutral, "I've been informed that we will be receiving additional testimony relevant to this case. The court will accommodate this witness as a matter of priority." Miss Barnes stood. "Your Honor, we weren't notified of any additional witnesses. We would request time to prepare for cross-examination." "Noted, counsel," Judge Harrington replied. "However, given the circumstances, I'm going to allow this testimony immediately. You'll understand momentarily." He nodded to the bailiff, who moved to the courtroom doors and opened them with a formal gesture. The heavy courtroom doors swung open with military precision. Commander Alexandra Alex Mitchell stood in the doorway in full Navy dress blues, her uniform impeccable medals and insignia catching the light. Her presence commanded immediate attention, shoulders squared, chin lifted, eyes forward. She was not particularly tall, but something in her bearing made her seem formidable. Behind her stood 6 Navy SEALs in formation. 3 men, 3 women also in dress blues, their faces impassive, their posture perfect. The laughter that had filled the room minutes before evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. Silence fell so completely that the sound of Commander Mitchell's measured footsteps echoed as she walked down the center aisle. Judge Harrington slowly rose from his seat, his eyes fixed on insignia and medals that told a story he hadn't believed possible. His face had drained of color, his earlier smugness replaced by something approaching reverence. The SEALs followed Alex in perfect step, their synchronized movements creating a visual rhythm that held the courtroom transfixed. They formed a line behind the respondents' table, standing at parade rest. Emma's eyes widened, her hand dropping from the pendant as she watched her mother approach. Thomas stood frozen, his expression a complex mixture of vindication and uncertainty. Commander Mitchell stopped at the appropriate distance from the bench and rendered a perfect salute. Commander Alexander Mitchell, United States Navy. Reporting as ordered, Your Honor. Judge Harrington returned the salute, automatically military muscle memory, overriding his judicial persona. The courtroom remained silent, every eye fixed on the commanding figure standing before the bench and the 6 uniformed SEALs positioned behind her. Permission to approach, Your Honor. Commander Mitchell asked, her voice clear and measured. Judge Harrington nodded, seemingly unable to find words. Commander Mitchell walked forward and presented a sealed folder to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. These documents were declassified this morning, specifically for this hearing, sir. They should explain my absences and verify my daughter's testimony. The judge accepted the folder with a slight nod, his earlier certainty visibly shaken. He opened it carefully, adjusting his glasses as he began to read. His eyes widened progressively as he turned each page. While the judge reviewed the documents, the unit of SEALs moved in perfect unison to stand behind Emma, a living wall of protection and validation. One of them, Lieutenant Diana Ramirez, placed a hand briefly on Emma's shoulder before resuming her position. Emma's fingers traced the pattern on her pendant one last time. Across the courtroom, her mother's hand made the same motion at her side, a private language between them, finally visible to all. Opposing counsel, Meredith Barnes shifted uncomfortably in her seat, shuffling papers without purpose, clearly unprepared for this development. Thomas Mitchell watched the scene unfold with a complex expression, pride and hurt and vindication all mingled together. After several minutes of silence, broken only by the sound of turning pages, Judge Harrington finally looked up from the documents. His face had transformed, the earlier mockery replaced by something approaching reverence. The court will take a 30-minute recess, he announced, his voice slightly unsteady. When we reconvene, this hearing will continue in my chambers with limited attendance. Commander Mitchell, Professor Mitchell, counsel for both parties, and the minor child only. As people filed out of the courtroom, many casting backward glances at the SEALs who remained at attention, Emma finally moved. She walked directly to her mother, stopping just short of embracing her, understanding instinctively that while in uniform, in formation, certain protocols had to be maintained. Commander Mitchell looked down at her daughter, and for a brief moment, the military bearing softened. You kept faith, she said quietly. Always, Emma replied. The bailiff approached. Commander, the judge has arranged a conference room where your unit can wait comfortably. Commander Mitchell nodded. Thank you. She turned to her unit. At ease. Lieutenant Ramirez, you'll accompany me to the judge's chambers. The rest of you remain on standby. The SEALs acknowledged the order with crisp nods, then filed out behind the bailiff. Lieutenant Ramirez remained standing at parade rest near Commander Mitchell. In the nearly empty courtroom, Thomas finally approached his wife. He stopped several feet away, his expression guarded. 8 years, he said quietly. 8 years of not knowing, of watching Emma wonder if you cared at all. I know, Alex replied, her voice equally soft but firm. And I'll answer for that, but not here, not now. Thomas nodded once, then looked at Lieutenant Ramirez and the remaining SEALs waiting by the door. So it's all true. Everything Emma said. She's more observant than we realized, Alex said, a hint of pride in her voice. She put the pieces together years ago. Never said a word to me about it until recently. Emma stood between her parents, still not touching either one, her eyes moving between them. I knew you wouldn't believe me, Dad. No one would. That's why I never told you what I figured out. Before Thomas could respond, the bailiff returned. Judge Harrington is ready for you now. Judge Harrington's chambers were lined with military memorabilia and law books, two worlds that had shaped his identity. Naval commendations and photographs with high-ranking officers occupied one wall. Framed degrees and legal certificates claimed another. The juxtaposition told its own story about the man who presided here. He sat behind his desk, the classified documents open before him, his earlier certainty replaced by humility. Please be seated, he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged before his desk. Lieutenant Ramirez took a position near the door, standing at parade rest. Once everyone was settled, Judge Harrington cleared his throat. Commander Mitchell, I owe your daughter an apology. These documents confirm the existence of the program she described, a classified initiative to integrate women into Special Operations Forces, including a modified SEAL training protocol. Commander Mitchell sat with perfect posture, her demeanor professional. The program has been active for 7 years, Your Honor. I was among the first candidates selected, which explains your absences. Judge Harrington nodded. Deployments, training cycles, missions that cannot be discussed. Yes, sir. My service required absolute secrecy, even from my family. Alex's gaze shifted to Thomas. My husband was only told I was on classified assignments. The nature of those assignments remained confidential. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. I understood she was serving, but the length and frequency of absences became impossible to explain to Emma. When Alex couldn't even call during emergencies, when she missed Emma's hospitalization with pneumonia, her elementary school graduation, I thought she had simply chosen her career over her family. I served my country at the cost of serving my daughter, Alex said, the first crack appearing in her professional demeanor. I'm here to correct that imbalance. Judge Harrington turned to Emma. How did you know about your mother's actual role? These documents indicate that information was classified at the highest level. Emma touched her pendant. She never told me directly, but I found her training journal once when I was 8. It didn't say SEAL anywhere, but it had swimming distances and times combat exercises, the names of instructors I later researched. And I overheard things when she was on secure calls. I put it together. And you kept her secret, Judge Harrington said with newfound respect, even when no one believed you. Some things are more important than being believed, Emma said simply. The words hung in the air, profound in their simplicity. Commander, the judge continued, these documents explain your absence today and at previous hearings. What they don't explain is why you've chosen to appear now and with your unit. The program remains classified, yet you've made a very public statement by appearing in this courtroom. Alex straightened in her chair. Sir, our unit completed its final mission 3 weeks ago. The existence of the program is being declassified in stages, with limited information becoming public next month. When I learned of today's custody hearing and the line of questioning my daughter was facing, I requested emergency partial declassification from my commanding officer. It was granted this morning. She placed another document on the judge's desk. This authorizes me to confirm my role in the program and acknowledge the existence of female operators in naval special warfare. The specifics of our mission's training protocols and capabilities remain classified. And your unit's presence today, Judge Harrington asked. They volunteered, sir, to support both me and my daughter, to help correct a wrong done to Emma by the secrecy our mission required. Lieutenant Ramirez spoke for the first time. Permission to speak, Your Honor. Judge Harrington nodded. Our unit operates as a family, sir. Commander Mitchell has led us through situations I cannot describe, but which tested every limit of human endurance. When we learned her daughter was being disbelieved, mocked for telling the truth about her mother, we unanimously requested to appear to stand witness. Judge Harrington nodded slowly, then turned to Thomas. Professor Mitchell, this changes the context of your custody petition significantly. Do you wish to proceed? Thomas looked at his wife, then his daughter. I don't know. I filed for custody because I believed Emma needed stability, predictability. I thought Alex was choosing to be absent. Now I learn she's been serving in ways I couldn't have imagined. I need time to process this. Your Honor, Alex interjected. If I may, I have requested a transfer to training operations, still classified, but based stateside with predictable hours. My unit has completed our assigned missions. We've proven what needed to be proven. Judge Harrington closed the folder. This court will take this new information under advisement. Given the classified nature of much of this testimony, I'm sealing the record of today's proceedings. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks to revisit the custody arrangement in light of Commander Mitchell's changed circumstances. He turned to Emma. Young lady, I owe you an apology. You showed remarkable courage today, standing by the truth even when disbelieved by those in authority, including myself. That's a rare quality. Emma nodded, accepting the apology with the same composure she had shown throughout. If there's nothing else, Judge Harrington said, this hearing is adjourned until 2 weeks from today. Commander Mitchell, please extend my respects to your unit. As they left the judge's chambers, Emma walked between her parents, not touching either one, but closer than before. The rest of the SEAL unit waited in the hallway, standing to attention as Commander Mitchell emerged. At ease, she told them. The judge has sealed the proceedings and adjourned until further notice. Thank you for your presence today. Lieutenant Ramirez stepped forward. Permission to speak freely. Commander, Alex nodded. Your daughter has the makings of an operator, Ramirez said with a small smile. Observant, disciplined, courageous under fire. That's enough, Lieutenant, Alex said, but there was warmth in her voice. My daughter will choose her own path when the time comes. As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Thomas finally broke his silence. Where will you stay tonight? Your apartment was rented out years ago. The Navy has arranged accommodations, Alex replied. No. Emma's voice was firm. Mom, come home with us, please. Just for tonight. Alex and Thomas exchanged a long look over their daughter's head. Years of separation and misunderstanding hanging between them. Just for tonight, Thomas finally agreed. We have a lot to talk about. Alex nodded, then turned to her unit. Dismissed. Report to base at 0800 tomorrow. The SEALs saluted and departed, moving with the same synchronized precision they had shown in the courtroom. Only Lieutenant Ramirez remained. Commander, she said quietly, the team wanted you to give this to your daughter. She handed Alex a small object, then saluted and walked away. Alex looked down at the item in her palm, a challenge coin, the special operations insignia modified with a subtle marker known only to those in their program. We give these to people who keep faith when everything tells them not to, she said, placing it in Emma's hand. Welcome to the family. The coin gleamed in Emma's palm, a tangible validation of the truth she had known and protected all along. The Mitchell family emerged from the courthouse into the afternoon sunlight, the world around them seemingly unchanged, while everything between them had shifted fundamentally. The grand steps of the Philadelphia County Courthouse stretched before them, each marble slab representing another step toward a new reality none of them had fully processed. Emma walked slightly ahead, the challenge coin clutched in her palm, its weight both unfamiliar and somehow right. Behind her, Thomas and Alex maintained a careful distance from each other, the gravity of 8 years of separation creating an invisible barrier neither knew how to breach. I parked over there. Thomas gestured toward the faculty lot 2 blocks away, his voice unnaturally formal. Unless you have transport waiting. Alex shook her head. My team has departed. I expected to arrange something after the proceedings. Their conversation, stilted and awkward, carried none of the ease that had once characterized their relationship. Emma turned to watch them, her eyes moving between her parents with an understanding beyond her years. We should eat, she said simply, the practical suggestion breaking through the tension. I'm hungry. The unexpected normalcy of the request drew a small smile from Alex. Some things never change. You've always thought with your stomach after stressful situations. Still does, Thomas confirmed, the first moment of shared understanding passing between them. There's a diner 3 blocks from here. Emma likes their milkshakes. Carson's? Alex asked, surprising them both. With the chocolate malt that's too thick for the straw. Emma's eyes widened slightly. You remember that? I remember everything, Emma, Alex said, softly, even when I couldn't be here. The diner provided neutral territory, a public space where the family dynamics could adjust without the weight of home's memories. They sat in a corner booth, Emma beside the window, her parents facing each other across the table. The normalcy of the setting contrasted sharply with the extraordinary revelations of the day. A waitress took their order with cheerful efficiency, oblivious to the significance of the 3 people before her. In her eyes, they were just another family having a late lunch. When she departed, silence fell heavily until Emma broke it. "When did you know you were going to be a SEAL?" she asked, direct as always. Alex glanced around instinctively, checking for eavesdroppers before answering. "I didn't, not initially. 8 years ago, I was serving as a naval intelligence officer when I was approached about a classified program. They didn't call it SEAL training then. It was designated Special Warfare Integration Protocol." She paused as the waitress delivered their drinks. When they were alone again, Alex continued, her voice low. "I was told only that it would be the most demanding assignment of my career, that the failure rate would be astronomical, and that success would mean making history that few would ever know about." "And you said yes," Emma said. "Not a question." "I said yes," Alex confirmed. "You were four. Thomas and I had discussed the possibility of a classified assignment. We'd agreed that my career might require temporary separation." Temporary. Thomas repeated the word, weighted with 8 years of accumulated absence. Not 8 years of mission after mission. Not missing every milestone in our daughter's life. Alex's gaze didn't waver. "I know." "What was it like?" Emma asked, steering the conversation away from the brewing conflict. "The training." A shadow crossed Alex's face, memories of pain and endurance etched in the subtle lines around her eyes. "It was beyond anything I could have imagined. They took the traditional BUDS training, already considered the most brutal military qualification program in existence, and modified it. Not to make it easier for women, as some might assume, but to account for different physiological strengths and weaknesses." She took a sip of water, collecting her thoughts. 32 women were selected from across all military branches. Most had special operations adjacent experience like me, in intelligence, or others in combat medicine, language specialization, tactical communication. By the second week, we were down to 24. "What happened to the others?" Emma asked. "They didn't make it through Hell Week," Alex said simply. 5 continuous days of constant physical activity, total sleep deprivation, and cold water conditions. It's designed to push you beyond your limits, to see who refuses to quit. The memory of that week rose unbidden in Alex's mind. The freezing surf of Coronado Beach pounding her body, instructors shouting through bullhorns as she and the other candidates performed endless push-ups in the wet sand. The way her muscles had screamed in protest, how her mind had fragmented from sleep deprivation until time itself seemed to warp and bend. "The fourth night was the worst," she continued, her voice taking on a distant quality. 3 women quit within an hour of each other. We were doing surf torture, lying in the Pacific until hypothermia sets in, then running to warm up, then back into the water, over and over. Our core temperatures were dropping dangerously low, especially for female bodies that naturally have less insulating muscle mass than males. "How did you get through it?" Emma asked, fascinated and horrified at once. Alex's eyes focused on her daughter. "I thought of you. I made a promise that I would see you graduate high school someday. It was just a mental trick to keep going, but it worked. One more evolution, one more hour, one more minute. That's how you survive. You reduce your world to the smallest possible increment of time." Thomas listened intently, his academic interest in naval history temporarily overriding his personal feelings. "The Navy has maintained there are no women in the SEALs. How has this remained secret for 7 years?" "Compartmentalization," Alex replied. "Most of the regular SEAL teams don't know we exist. We operate under a different command structure, with missions specifically selected for our unit composition. The entire program was structured to maintain deniability," she continued. "Our training facilities were separate from the main SEAL compounds. Even our graduation ceremony was classified. Just the 6 of us who made it through, our commanding officers and a handful of program administrators. No photographs, no certificates, nothing that could leak." "What was the hardest part?" Emma asked. Alex considered the question carefully. "The isolation. Not being able to tell anyone what we were accomplishing, not even you and your father. Knowing that, as far as the world was concerned, we didn't exist. But that changed after your first successful mission." A small, fierce smile crossed Alex's face. "Yes, we deployed to an operation I can't discuss, but when we returned, the attitude had shifted. Success speaks louder than any argument. By our 3rd year, we had completed 14 operations with a 100% success rate. Even the skeptics in Naval Special Warfare Command couldn't deny our effectiveness." Their food arrived temporarily, pausing the conversation. When they were alone again, Emma resumed her questioning. The compass, she said, touching the pendant around her neck. It's more than just a necklace, isn't it? Alex's expression softened. You figured that out too. She reached across the table, gently taking the pendant in her fingers. With practiced movements, she rotated the outer ring in a specific pattern, then pressed the center button 3 times in rapid succession. The face of the compass slid aside, revealing a tiny compartment containing what looked like a microchip. It's a secure communication device, Alex explained. If activated with the correct sequence, it sends an encrypted location signal that only my team can track. I gave it to you when you were 7 before a particularly dangerous deployment. I told you it was so you'd always know how to find your way home. But it was so I could find you if I needed to, Emma concluded. Alex nodded. And so I could find you. The tracking works both ways. Thomas stared at the device. You gave our daughter classified military technology. I gave our daughter protection, Alex corrected. The night you called about her pneumonia, I was operating in Southeast Asia. I couldn't respond, couldn't even acknowledge the message. But I tracked her location through this. I knew which hospital, which floor, which room. It was the only way I could be with her when I couldn't be with her. The revelation hung in the air between them. Emma looked at her mother with new understanding. You were watching over me. Always, X confirmed, even when you couldn't see me. The moment transported Alex back to that night in Bangkok 3 years ago. The safe house had been Spartan, a small apartment above a noodle shop, walls thin enough that the street noise filtered through constantly. Her team had been preparing for the raid on the trafficking compound, weapons laid out on the table, satellite imagery spread across the walls, when the compass alert had vibrated against her chest. She had slipped away to the bathroom, the only private space available, and checked the coordinates. Philadelphia Children's Hospital. She had pulled up the schematics of the building on her secure tablet, tracked the signal to the 4th-floor pediatric wardroom 412. Using her intelligence clearance, she had hacked into the hospital records, finding Emma's admission form. Severe pneumonia, high fever, difficulty breathing. The mission countdown clock had shown 16 hours until deployment. She had stood in that cramped bathroom, worlds apart from her daughter, torn between duty and desperation, in a way that made her physically ill. In the end, she had sent a secure message to her handler in Virginia requesting emergency family contact. The answer had come back within minutes. Request denied. Mission priority alpha. Communication blackout remains in effect. She had returned to the mission, planning her face a mask of professional detachment while her heart shattered with each breath. Later that night, she had slipped away again, this time to the roof of the building, and spent 3 precious minutes watching the dot that represented Emma's location, the only connection to her child she was permitted. 2 days later, they had rescued 37 girls from the trafficking compound. The youngest had been 9 years old, clutching a worn stuffed animal as Alex carried her to the extraction vehicle. In the girl's frightened eyes, Alex had seen her own daughter, and the justification for her absence had both solidified and crumbled simultaneously. Thomas pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? I couldn't, Alex said simply. The program's existence was classified at the highest level. Revealing it to anyone, even family, would have been considered treason. So instead, you let us think you'd abandoned us, Thomas said, the hurt evident in his voice. You let Emma grow up wondering why her mother didn't care enough to show up. I made an impossible choice, Alex acknowledged, between my country and my family. It was wrong to place that burden on you both. I recognize that now. Emma studied her mother's face, seeing the cost of those choices etched in the new lines around her eyes, the tightness at the corners of her mouth. Tell us about the other women, she said, changing the subject again. Like Lieutenant Ramirez. Alex seemed grateful for the shift. Diana Ramirez is one of the finest operators I've ever served with. Former Force Recon Marine before she was recruited. She has twin boys 6 years old. Her husband thinks she works in naval intelligence analysis. He doesn't know either, Thomas asked. None of our families know. Chief Martinez has a husband who teaches high school English in San Diego. Commander Wilson chose not to have a family, knowing what this life would require. How many completed the training, Emma asked. 6, Alex said, out of 32. We became Athena unit, named after the goddess of strategic warfare. And what exactly does Athena unit do? Thomas asked, his tone suggesting he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Alex chose her words carefully. We undertake missions that specifically benefit from female operators. Situations where women can access places and information that would be impossible for traditional SEAL teams. Something in her expression darkened, a shadow of memory crossing her face. She took a deep breath before continuing. 3 weeks ago, we completed our final mission as a unit. It marked the end of the experimental phase of the program. The existence of female operators in naval special warfare will be publicly acknowledged next month in a limited capacity. Is that why you're here now? Thomas asked. Because the secret is finally coming out anyway. No, Alex said firmly. I'm here because my daughter needed me. The timing is coincidental. She turned to Emma, her expression softening. When I received word about today's hearing about you being questioned regarding my whereabouts, I requested emergency declassification from my commanding officer. I didn't know you had figured out so much on your own. Emma's fingers traced the edge of the challenge coin Lieutenant Ramirez had given her. I've known since I was 8, she admitted. I found your journal when I was looking for batteries in your desk. It had these strange workout routines, underwater breath-holding times, notes about infiltration techniques. I started researching, comparing what I found to public information about Special Forces training. You never said anything, Alex said, amazed. Who would have believed me? Emma shrugged. Besides, I understood it was a secret. Secrets are supposed to be kept. Thomas stared at his daughter, seeing her in a new light. This child who had carried such knowledge, who had protected her mother's secret even when it would have been easier to share it. You said your final mission was 3 weeks ago, he said, turning back to Alex. What happens now? I've requested reassignment to training operations at Naval Special Warfare Center in Virginia. It's a 3-hour drive, but I'd be home most weekends, some weeknights. No more 6-month deployments. No more missing birthdays. The offer hung between them, both promise and question. If that's what you both want, Alex added softly. Before either could respond, Emma's eyes widened, focused on something over her mother's shoulder. Alex tensed instantly, her hand moving subtly toward her hip, where a weapon would normally be concealed. Commander Mitchell, the voice belonged to an elderly man who had approached their table unnoticed. He stood with military bearing, despite his age, his eyes bright with emotion. I apologize for the interruption, he said. I was having lunch with my daughter when I saw you in uniform. I just wanted to say thank you. Alex relaxed slightly but remained alert. Do I know you, sir? No, ma'am, but I know what that insignia means. He nodded toward her uniform. My granddaughter was one of the girls your team rescued in Bangkok 2 years ago. The State Department wouldn't tell us who conducted the operation, but I served long enough to recognize a special operations mission when I hear one. Alex's expression revealed nothing, but Emma saw her mother's knuckles whiten around her water glass. I'm afraid you must be mistaken, sir, Alex said carefully. The man smiled knowingly. Of course, Commander. My mistake. He glanced at Emma and Thomas. You have a beautiful family. I won't take any more of your time. As he walked away, Thomas stared at his wife. Bangkok. Alex took a measured breath. I can't confirm or deny specific operations. Human trafficking, Emma said quietly. The adults turned to her in surprise. I read about a raid in Bangkok 2 years ago. 37 girls rescued from a trafficking ring, some as young as 9. Alex's silence was confirmation enough. Thomas looked at his wife, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since she'd walked into the courtroom. The weight of her choices, the nature of her sacrifices began to take on new meaning. While Emma was sick with pneumonia, he asked softly. Alex nodded almost imperceptibly. I can't discuss it. You don't need to, Emma said, reaching across the table to touch her mother's hand. I understand now. The simple gesture broke something in Alex's carefully maintained composure. For a brief moment, her military bearing faltered, emotion flickering across her face before she regained control. We should go, Thomas said, sensing the need to move this conversation to more private surroundings. It's been a long day for everyone. The Mitchell home stood on a quiet street in a Philadelphia suburb, a colonial-style house with a swing on the porch and a basketball hoop in the driveway. Alex paused at the front steps, taking in the sight of a place she had visited only sporadically over the past 8 years. Dad repainted last summer, Emma said, noticing her mother's gaze. I helped with the trim. Thomas unlocked the door and stepped aside. It's different inside. We renovated the kitchen 2 years ago. Alex nodded and entered, her movements still precise and economical, even in civilian space. She had changed out of her dress uniform into civilian clothes, dark jeans, and a simple button-down shirt, but her military bearing remained unmistakable. The house felt both familiar and foreign to her. Family photos lined the walls documenting Emma's growth. Soccer tournaments, science fairs, piano recitals. Alex stopped before each one, studying the moments she had missed. "I kept albums for you," Thomas said quietly, "with dates and descriptions. They're in your study." Alex turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. "You kept my study? It seemed important," he replied with a shrug, "for when you came home." The simple statement held volumes of unspoken meaning. Despite everything, Thomas had maintained a space for her, had never fully accepted her absence as permanent. Standing in the hallway, Alex was transported back to when they'd first met 15 years ago. She had been a rising star in naval intelligence, attending a conference at the University of Pennsylvania where Thomas was presenting research on Cold War naval operations. Their first conversation had lasted 5 hours, continuing from the lecture hall to a nearby pub, both of them too engrossed to notice the passage of time. He had been brilliant, passionate about history in a way that made it seem alive and relevant. She had been ambitious, dedicated to service, but hungry for intellectual challenge. They had married 6 months later, a whirlwind romance that had surprised their friends, but felt inevitable to them. Emma had come 2 years after a planned addition to their carefully balanced lives. Alex had shifted to a stateside assignment, determined to be both mother and officer. For 4 years they had made it work. Not perfectly, but well enough. Then the invitation to join the experimental program had arrived, and everything had changed. Emma disappeared upstairs and returned with a small wooden box. "I kept things too," she said, placing it on the coffee table. "Things I thought you'd want to know about." Alex sat on the couch, opening the box carefully. Inside lay a collection of mementos, report cards, certificates, medals from swimming competitions, handwritten notes. "You swim competitively?" Alex asked, lifting a gold medal. "Started when I was 9? Emma nodded. "I'm best at long distance. Coach says I have unusual endurance for my age." A hint of pride colored her voice. Alex's fingers traced the medal. "Your grandmother was a champion swimmer. My mother, she would have been proud." "I know," Emma said. "Dad told me. He talks about your family a lot. Make sure I know where I come from on both sides." Thomas moved to the kitchen. "I'll make dinner. You two have catching up to do." When he was gone, Emma sat beside her mother, still maintaining a small distance between them. "Was it worth it?" she asked, her voice low. "What you do, was it worth missing everything in this box?" Alex considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "For the country, yes. For the program, for the women who will follow us, yes." She looked directly at her daughter. "For you and me personally, no. That's the hardest part of service, sometimes reconciling the greater good with personal cost." Emma nodded, absorbing this. "The other SEALs, do they have families?" "Some do. Lieutenant Ramirez has twin boys, 6 years old. Chief Martinez has a husband who thinks she works in naval intelligence analysis. Commander Wilson has no family by choice." "How do they do it, balance everything?" "Not perfectly," Alex admitted. "That's why I requested the transfer. Our unit proved what needed proving. Now younger operators can carry that legacy forward, while some of us focus on building the parts of our lives we put on hold." Emma pulled the challenge coin from her pocket, running her thumb over its surface. "What does this symbol mean, the one that's not the regular SEAL insignia?" "It marks us as part of the integrated experimental unit, the first to include women. It's a designation of both honor and, until recently, absolute secrecy." "Will there be more units like yours now?" "That's the plan. We were the test case. 8 years of proving women could meet the standards, execute the missions, endure the same conditions." Pride tinged at Alex's voice. "It wasn't easy. We lost candidates in training, faced resistance from traditional units, dealt with skepticism at every level." "Like the judge today," Emma said. "Exactly. But the results speak for themselves. Our unit has one of the highest mission success rates in special operations history." From the kitchen came the sounds of Thomas preparing dinner, the familiar rhythm of chopping and the clatter of pans creating a domestic counterpoint to their conversation. "Dad never dated anyone else," Emma said suddenly. People asked him out, but he always said he was married. Even when he was angriest about your absences, he never talked about divorce. Alex's expression softened. Your father is a man of principle. He believes in commitment. He believed in you, Emma corrected. Even when he didn't understand, he believed there must be a reason. He just couldn't reconcile it with what was best for me. Hence the custody hearing, Alex nodded. I understand his reasoning. In his position, I might have done the same. Will you stay? Now really stay? Emma asked the question hanging between them like a fragile thing. My new assignment is at Naval Special Warfare Center in Virginia. It's a 3-hour drive, but I'd come home weekends, some weeknights. No more 6-month deployments. No more missing birthdays. Alex hesitated. If that's what you both want. Emma's answer was interrupted by Thomas calling them to dinner. The table was set for 3, a sight so ordinary yet so rare in the Mitchell household that it carried its own weight of meaning. They ate in a silence that gradually eased into cautious conversation. Neutral topics about the neighborhood, Emma's school, Thomas's latest research project on naval history during the Revolutionary War. You could have consulted me on that one, Alex remarked with the faintest hint of a smile. I considered reaching out through your handler, Thomas admitted, but it seemed trivial compared to whatever you were doing. Nothing about your work is trivial, she replied. Your last book is actually on the recommended reading list for naval officers now. Thomas looked up in surprise. You know about the book. I keep track of your career too in my own way, Alex said, even when I couldn't be here. After dinner, Emma helped clear the table, then announced she had homework to finish. She hesitated at the bottom of the stairs. Mom, will you still be here in the morning? Yes, Alex promised. I don't report until afternoon tomorrow. Emma nodded satisfied and went upstairs, leaving her parents alone with years of unspoken words between them. Thomas poured 2 glasses of wine and led the way to the back porch. The evening air carried the first hint of autumn crispness. The garden below them was neatly maintained, but showing signs of the changing season. She's extraordinary, Alex said after a long moment of silence. You've done an incredible job raising her. She's like you in all the ways that matter, Thomas replied. Determined, principled, observant, and yes, stubborn as hell. Alex acknowledged this with a small nod. I've missed so much. The documents you saw today in court, they only scratched the surface of what we've been doing. The program's importance, what it means for women in special operations moving forward, it's hard to overstate. I don't doubt it, Thomas said. What I've struggled with is not the importance of your work, but the cost to Emma. And to you, Alex added quietly. I'm an adult. I made my choices with open eyes when I married you, knowing your commitment to service. Thomas looked out over the garden. Emma didn't get that choice. No, she didn't, and that's something I'll have to make peace with. Alex turned towards him. What happens now, Thomas, with the custody case, with us? The custody case is simple enough. With your new stateside assignment, there's no reason to alter the current arrangement. You're still her mother, still have legal custody alongside me. He took a sip of wine. As for us, that's more complicated. 8 years is a long time to live separate lives. Yes, it is. Alex's voice held no argument, only acknowledgement. I won't pretend I can walk back in and pick up where we left off. I know too much about what combat deployments do to relationships, how they change people. I'm not the same woman who left, and you're not the same man who stayed. No, Thomas agreed. But maybe that's not what matters most. What matters is whether the people we've become still fit together in some way for Emma's sake, if nothing else. For Emma, Alex nodded, and maybe eventually for our own sakes too. They sat in silence as darkness settled over the garden. The distance between them on the porch swing, both physical and metaphorical, yet somehow less vast than it had been that morning. In the guest bathroom, Alex stood before the mirror, examining her reflection. She touched the thin scar that ran along her hairline, usually hidden but visible if you knew to look for it. A memento from a night insertion gone wrong off the coast of Somalia. One of many marks her body carried that told stories she could never share. She changed into the clothes Thomas had left for her old sweatpants and a University of Pennsylvania t-shirt that felt like artifacts from another life. As she moved through her nightly routine, muscle memory took over her body, remembering this space even after years away. Down the hall, Emma lay in bed, the challenge coin on her nightstand, catching the moonlight. She turned it over in her hands one last time before placing it carefully beside the compass pendant she'd removed for the night. Tangible proof that her mother had always been exactly who Emma believed her to be. In his bedroom, Thomas sat on the edge of the bed, holding a framed photograph from their wedding day. They had been so young, so certain of the path ahead. He traced Alex's face in the photo, trying to reconcile the smiling bride with the hardened warrior who had walked into that courtroom today. Both versions were Alex. Both were true. The Mitchell house settled into night, three people under one roof for the first time in years, each in their separate spaces connected by blood and memory and the tentative promise of a future together. Nothing resolved, everything changed. Morning would bring new challenges, new conversations, new negotiations of their shared lives. But for now, in the quiet dark, they existed in the same space again. It was enough. It was a beginning. 2 weeks passed with the Mitchell family navigating the delicate terrain of reunion. Each day brought small revelations, minor adjustments, tentative steps toward a new normal that none of them could yet define. Alex had returned to the naval base during weekdays, but came home each evening, her commute a small price to pay for the chance to rebuild what had been lost. The morning of the final custody hearing dawned clear and crisp, autumn asserting itself across Philadelphia. Emma stood before her bedroom mirror, carefully securing her hair in a neat braid, her movements deliberate and precise. The compass pendant hung around her neck, no longer just a keepsake, but a symbol of connection. On her desk lay the challenge coin from Alex's unit, its weight and meaning far exceeding its physical presence. Downstairs, Thomas prepared breakfast with the same care he'd shown every morning for 8 years, but today the table was set for 3. The kitchen radio murmured news of world events, a background rhythm to their domestic scene. When the report turned to military operations overseas, Thomas's hand paused briefly over the dial before moving away. Some things were easier not to hear. "Morning," Alex said, entering the kitchen in her service uniform, crisp and authoritative. She moved with a contained efficiency that had become so familiar to them over the past 2 weeks, her military bearing softened only slightly in the privacy of home. "You didn't have to wear the uniform today," Thomas observed, sliding a plate of eggs toward her. "For Emma, I did," Alex replied. "She deserves the formal acknowledgement of who I am, especially after being disbelieved for so long." Emma appeared in the doorway, her school clothes replaced by a modest blue dress that mirrored, perhaps unconsciously, the color of her mother's uniform. "You look nice," Alex said, something warm flickering across her usually composed features. "So do you," Emma replied, her eyes taking in her mother's uniform with quiet pride. Thomas watched this exchange with complex emotions crossing his face. Pride in his daughter's dignity, respect for his wife's service, lingering hurt at the years lost between them, and something newer, less defined, a cautious hope for what might still be possible. "The hearing is at 10, he said, checking his watch. "We should leave by 9:30 to be safe." They ate together, the silence more comfortable than it had been that first night. Over the past 2 weeks, they had established small rituals. Emma telling stories of school, Thomas discussing his research, Alex sharing what little she could about her new assignment, training the next generation of female operators. The gaps in conversation no longer felt like chasms, but like pauses, spaces where understanding might eventually grow. As they cleared the breakfast dishes, Emma hesitated, then spoke the question that had been weighing on her mind. "After today, what happens? Do we just go back to normal?" Thomas and Alex exchanged glances, the question hanging between them. "There is no going back to what was before, but Alex said, finally choosing her words with care. "But we can build something new if that's what you both want." "It's what I want," Emma said, her certainty a contrast to her parents' caution. "It's what I've always wanted." The Philadelphia County Courthouse looked different to them now. What had once been an imposing symbol of judgment had become the site of revelation, the place where long-held secrets had finally found voice. They climbed the stone steps together, no longer separated by absence and misunderstanding, but by the careful distance of people relearning one another. In the corridor outside Judge Harrington's chambers, they found Lieutenant Diana Ramirez waiting in her dress blues, standing at ease with her cover tucked under her arm. "Commander," she nodded to Alex, then to the others. "Professor Mitchell, Emma." "Lieutenant Atkan," Alex replied, her posture automatically straightening. "I didn't expect you today." "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." "Granted. The unit wanted representation here. This matters to all of us. Ramirez's gaze moved to Emma. Besides, I wanted to see the young lady who kept faith when no one else did. That's a rare quality in this world. Emma stood straighter under the lieutenant's regard, unconsciously mirroring her mother's military bearing. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. The bailiff appeared, directing them to enter Judge Harrington's chambers. The room felt different too, less intimidating. The military memorabilia on the walls now read as points of connection rather than symbols of authority. Judge Harrington himself had undergone a transformation, his previous condescension replaced by a new humility that tempered his natural gravitas. "Please be seated," he said, gesturing to the chairs before his desk. Lieutenant Ramirez took a position by the door, standing at parade rest as she had 2 weeks earlier. "I've reviewed the amended custody agreement you've submitted," the judge began once they were settled. "Joint physical and legal custody with Commander Mitchell's primary residence being the family home for purposes of school enrollment and stability for the minor child. Commander Mitchell's new assignment will allow regular presence in the home with scheduled absences for training rotations, all of which are outlined in the addendum." He looked up from the document. "Is this an accurate summary?" "Yes, Your Honor," both parents confirmed. The judge turned to Emma. "And you've reviewed this arrangement as a—" "I have, sir," she replied. "It works for our family." Judge Harrington studied her for a moment, still clearly impressed by her composure and maturity. "Very well. Given the circumstances and the agreement between parties, I see no reason not to approve this arrangement." He signed the document with a flourish. "This case is hereby resolved to the satisfaction of the court." He set his pen down, his formal duty complete, but made no move to dismiss them. Instead, he leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "If I may speak less officially for a moment," he said, "in 30 years on the bench, I've rarely been so thoroughly schooled in the dangers of assumption. Emma, your conviction in the face of my dismissal was extraordinary. You showed more courage in that courtroom than many adults I've encountered." Emma accepted the compliment with a slight nod, her composure unwavering. "And Commander Mitchell," the judge continued, "what you and your unit have accomplished will change the face of naval special warfare forever. I've had the privilege of reviewing your service record as part of these proceedings, and while the specifics remain classified, I want you to know that this old sailor is profoundly impressed." "Thank you, sir," Alex replied, her voice even. The judge stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "This court wishes your family well as you navigate these new waters together." As they exited the courthouse, Emma walked between her parents on the broad stone steps. The autumn sun bathed the scene in golden light, so different from the tension-filled day of their last appearance. Lieutenant Ramirez followed a few paces behind, a respectful distance that acknowledged both her connection to the family and her separate role. At the bottom of the steps, Ramirez spoke again. "Commander, I wanted to let you know we'll be ready for you on Monday at the training center. Everything's in place for the new program." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Alex replied. "I'll be there at 0700. As Ramirez departed, Emma looked up at her mother. "What new program?" "The one I'll be running," Alex explained, "training the next generation of female special operators, building on what our unit started." "Will you tell them about me?" Emma asked. About the 12-year-old who figured out a top-secret program and kept it to herself for years, who faced down a courtroom of disbelief with nothing but her conviction, Alex smiled, a rare, full expression that transformed her face. "You better believe it. You'll be lesson 1 in observational skills and operational security." Thomas laughed, the sound startling all of them with its naturalness. Just what her ego needs. As they walked toward the car, Emma between them, she reached out and took both their hands, creating a physical connection between the three of them for the first time in years. "Home?" she asked, a question that meant more than its single syllable suggested. Alex squeezed her daughter's hand, meeting Thomas's eyes over Emma's head. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended the complications of their past and acknowledged the work still ahead. "Home," Alex confirmed, a promise in her voice that hadn't been there before. Behind them, the courthouse stood tall against the autumn sky, a place where truth had finally outweighed assumption, where judgment had yielded to understanding, and where a different kind of justice had ultimately prevailed. The weekend unfolded with the Mitchell family settling into new rhythms, tentative at first, but gradually finding their way. On Saturday morning, Alex joined Emma at her swim practice, watching from the bleachers as her daughter cut through the water with powerful, efficient strokes. "She has your mother's form," the coach commented, approaching Alex during a break. That long reach, the way she rolls her shoulder, it's textbook distance technique. She never met my mother, Alex said, watching Emma adjust her goggles for the next set. Doesn't matter, the coach replied. Some things run in the blood. Later that afternoon, Emma led Alex through the neighborhood, showing her the changes that had accumulated over 8 years of absences. The old oak tree that had fallen during a winter storm 2 years ago. The new coffee shop where the hardware store used to be. The park where Emma had learned to ride a bike, Thomas running alongside her until she found her balance. He never missed anything, Emma said as they sat on a bench watching children play on equipment that hadn't existed when Alex left. Even when he had evening lectures he'd reschedule or get someone to cover, he was always there. Alex absorbed this, the weight of Thomas's dedication and her own absence pressing down on her. He's a remarkable father, she acknowledged. You were lucky to have him. I needed both of you, Emma said simply. I still do. The statement hung between them, both accusation and absolution. Alex didn't try to defend herself. Some truths had to be acknowledged before healing could begin. I'll be there from now on, she promised, for everything I can be. I know, Emma replied, her faith in her mother fully restored now that she understood the reasons behind her absence. That evening, Thomas prepared dinner while Alex and Emma sat at the kitchen island, Emma working on geometry homework, Alex reviewing training protocols for Monday's session. The domesticity of the scene belied its novelty. Three people who were still learning how to exist in the same space after so many years apart. Will you have to go away again? Emma asked suddenly, her pencil pausing over a half-completed proof. For the training program, I mean. There will be occasional overnight exercises, Alex answered honestly. Some training evolutions require extended field operations, but nothing like before. No more disappearing for months at a time. Promise, Emma pressed. Alex set down her papers, giving her daughter her full attention. I promise that you will always know where I am and when I'll be back. I promise that I will never again miss important moments in your life. And I promise that my primary mission from now on is being your mother. Emma nodded, satisfied, and returned to her homework. Thomas, who had been listening from the stove, caught Alex's eye and gave her a small nod of approval. Another small step toward rebuilding trust. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Thomas and Alex sat in the living room, the silence between them more comfortable than it had been in 2 weeks. Thomas graded papers while Alex reviewed personnel files, each engaged in their separate work, but sharing the same space. What was it really like? Thomas asked, finally setting aside his grading. The training, the missions, all of it. I know you can't tell me the classified details, but what was it like for you? Alex considered the question, weighing what she could share against what must remain secret. Physically, it was beyond anything I could have imagined, she began slowly. Budsauce is legendary for its brutality, but our program added additional elements specifically designed to test female operators under extreme conditions. The cold water immersion was the worst. Our body composition made hypothermia a constant threat. She paused, memories flooding back. Mentally, it was even harder. We weren't just fighting the elements or our own limitations. We were fighting history, fighting perceptions. Every time one of us faltered, it wasn't seen as an individual failure, but as evidence that the entire concept was flawed. Thomas listened intently, his historian's mind cataloging details, even as his husband's heart ached for what she had endured. The men, he asked, how did they treat you? It varied. Some were openly hostile, convinced we were either going to die or get them killed. Others were skeptical but professional. A few were genuinely supportive, especially after they saw what we could do. She smiled faintly. By the third year, when our unit had completed several successful operations, the attitude shifted. Success is the ultimate argument in special operations. Results matter more than tradition. In the missions, Thomas asked cautiously, knowing he was approaching the boundaries of what she could discuss. Alex chose her words carefully. I can tell you that we specialize in operations where female operators provided tactical advantages, surveillance in environments where women attracted less attention, infiltration of targets where cultural norms limited male access, and yes, rescue operations focused on female hostages or trafficking victims. She met his eyes as directly. The Bangkok operation that man mentioned at the diner, I can't confirm specifics, but I will tell you that knowing Emma was sick while I was away was the hardest thing I've ever endured. I had to compartmentalize completely to function. I couldn't allow myself to think about her, about you, about what I was missing. Not until the mission was complete. Thomas absorbed this, the historian giving way to the husband and father. It must have been hell, he said simply. It was necessary, Alex replied. That's how I survived it, by believing in the necessity of what we were doing. And now is training the next generation necessary enough to keep you grounded here? The question carried layers of meaning about commitment, about priorities, about the future. Yes, Alex said firmly. Building this program is my mission now. Making sure the path is easier for those who follow. And rebuilding what I lost here, that's necessary too. More necessary than I understood before. Thomas nodded, accepting her answer without further comment. They returned to their separate tasks, but something had shifted between them, another small bridge built across the years of separation. Monday morning arrived with military precision, Alex departing before dawn for her first day at the training center. She moved quietly through the pre-dawn house, pausing only briefly at Emma's door before heading downstairs. To her surprise, Thomas was in the kitchen, coffee already brewing. You didn't have to get up, she said, checking her watch. It was 4:30 a.m. Old habits? He shrugged. I used to get up with you on deployment days. The simple statement carried the weight of shared history of patterns established and broken, and now tentatively resumed. Coffee's still the same, he said, pouring her a cup. Black, 1 sugar. Thank you, she replied, accepting the mug with a grateful nod. Such a small thing, but significant. He had remembered how she took her coffee after 8 years. Will you be home for dinner? He asked, the ordinary domestic question extraordinary in its normalcy. Barring any unforeseen issues, yes. Around 1800, 6 o'clock. She corrected herself, remembering to translate military time. I'll hold dinner if you're running late. Just text. Alex nodded, drinking her coffee in quick, efficient sips. As she rinsed the mug and placed it in the dishwasher, she hesitated, then turned back to Thomas. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. For being here, for raising Emma, for keeping my place. I know I haven't earned any of it yet. Your family, Thomas replied. That doesn't need to be earned. It just is. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center had been modified to accommodate the newly public female operator program. Alex strode through the main building toward the conference room where her new team awaited, Lieutenant Ramirez falling into step beside her in the corridor. All present and accounted for, Commander, Ramirez reported. 6 trainers from Athena Unit 4 senior enlisted from the traditional SEAL teams and 2 psychological specialists to address integration issues. The SEAL trainers, Alex asked? They're on board with the program. They've been briefed on our operational record, Ramirez replied with a small smile. Success speaks for itself, and having Chief Martinez's husband as one of the trainers helps. He's respected in the traditional teams.